Hello and welcome back to another session. In the last session, we learned the theory about AWS S3, its main features, and also about its pricing. You can find the link in the description if you haven't seen that already. In today's session, we'll get into the AWS console and see everything in action. I'll also show you how to access S3 using CLI, that is AWS command line interface, towards the end of the session. Let's get started. We are in the AWS console now. I am using the free account that we had set up in one of the previous sessions. Only additional thing that I have done here is instead of logging in as a root user, I created an IAM user with admin access and using that instead. This is one of the security best practices. Root account credentials should never be compromised as it's impossible to restrict anything for a root user. Creating IAM user is very simple using the console. Let me quickly show you that. Navigate to IAM service using the search tab and select users. You can see the list of users here. Now to add a user, you have to just click on add user. Give a username which will be used to log in later and grant both programmatic and console access as we can use the same user for accessing CLI commands later. Then you can set up a password or leave it as auto-generated password. Next step is to add permissions for the user. I'm going to keep it simple and attach an existing policy. Selecting administrator access here so that we can access all the services. And tags are optional here, so let's skip it for now. Review the details and click on create user. As I already have one, I'm going to skip this. You can log in with that user instead of the root user. Now let's head back to AWS console. And before going into S3, notice the top right corner. The current region we are at is displayed, which is North Virginia. By default, all the operations that you perform will be against it. However, once I click on S3, notice that it has changed to global. This is because S3 is a global service, meaning all the buckets created here are globally unique. So let's create a bucket. First thing you have to do is give a bucket name, which should follow some of the bucket naming standards. It can only start with numbers or letters and it can't end with period or hyphen. Basically, it should follow all the DNS naming standards. You can click on this link for more information. Next step is to select a region where you are going to store the bucket. So you can select one from the drop down. I'm going to leave it as US East. It also gives you an option to copy the settings of an already existing bucket. As we don't have one already, let's go ahead and set up the settings. You have an option to block all the public access for your bucket through access control list, bucket policies, and access point as well, which ensures that your bucket is secured and it's not publicly accessible. And you can also enable or disable versioning. Enabling the versioning allows you to store the buckets as different versions whenever you update it. And tags are optional, but it helps you in cost analysis. So let's add a single tag for now. I'm just adding created by and the IAM user who's creating the bucket. Next is encryption. By default, your object is unencrypted. It's always good to encrypt any sensitive data. You have two encryption options, both are server-side and AWS managed. With the difference in the key, one is AES 256 and the other is KMS managed key. And under the advanced settings, you have an option to enable object lock. which helps in adding write lock to your object, preventing your objects from any modifications. However, for enabling object lock, you have to enable versioning as well. Let's create the bucket. So you will see the basic details of the bucket here listed here, like the region, access, and creation date. For adding the objects to the bucket, first let's enter into the bucket. Once you enter into the bucket, you can see the list of objects which you have already added here. As we don't have any, let's click on upload. You can either upload a folder or a file. Select one of the files from your local. Once you selected the object, you can see the basic object details and also the basic bucket details. As we have disabled versioning, we acknowledge that we have disabled versioning here. Then you can select one of the storage classes that we discussed in detail in the last session. I'm going with the standard here. It gives you the gist of all the storage classes. You can also enable encryption just for this object within the bucket, even if the encryption is disabled at the bucket level. It has the same two options here, S3 and KMS. You get an option to set permissions for individual objects as well, allowing you to manage user level read-write access, cross-account access, and if you haven't blocked public access at bucket level, then we could manage public access here for specific object. The object lock settings of the bucket applies to the object. Both the tags and metadata are optional. You can add them for tracking your costs. That's it. Clicking on upload will upload your object. We can access the object just by clicking on the object file here and then click on open. That's it. It's really that simple. We have uploaded the object. Now imagine if you want to allow access to this object to all other users except for listen to learn IAM user. You can do that too by setting up bucket policies. Get into permissions. We have already blocked the public access. We are interested in setting up bucket policy now. Click on edit. So let's create a bucket policy. There is a policy generator. It's a JSON document which specifies who can or cannot access the bucket and the objects within it. So select S3 bucket policy in the policy type. And for effect, we are going to deny. Next principal is the ARN of the IAM user. So let's quickly grab that. Go to IAM and look for the ARN of the user. Once you have copied it, come back to the policy generator and paste it there. Service is S3 and in the actions, select get object. The ARN of the resource name should be the ARN of your object. Let's go back to the S3 console and get the ARN of the bucket first. The ARN of the object is the ARN of the bucket appended with the object key. Once you have filled in all the details, can click on Add Statement and generate the policy. It's a JSON document. It has randomly generated policy ID and statement ID, effect, resource to which it applies, and the principal. So copy this, head back to the S3 console, paste the document, save it. Now if we try to access the object, ideally we shouldn't be able to access the object. Open. So access denied. So it's very simple and also powerful. We can manage everything with a single JSON document. It also gives you an option to allow or deny all the actions within a single statement as well. We have covered most of the topics in S3 console. If you'd like me to cover anything specific, please let me know in the comments below. Now let's have a look at how to access S3 via CLI commands. These are the list of S3 CLI commands. CP allows you to copy objects from local to S3 or vice versa. LS lists all the buckets in the region. And MB helps in creating a bucket. And MV moves the contents of the bucket. Presign creates a presigned URL to access the bucket. RB removes the bucket. RM allows to remove the object within the bucket. And syncs the contents from source to destination by adding or removing the missing or additional files in the destination. Website creates a static website when we upload the related index and error files to the S3 bucket. So we are in the command prompt. Ensure that you have installed Python and AWS CLI. Once that is done, we can configure the credentials first. So if you execute AWS configure, it will ask you for the access key and the secret key. Give the ones which belongs to the IAM user created in the start of the session. The default region will be US East. I'm going to leave at that for now. And the output format by default is text. So let's leave it there. The first command which we are going to run is AWS S3 ls, which lists all the buckets in your current region. So as we have a single bucket that is listed here. Next, let's copy the object from the bucket into our local, which is AWS S3 CP, and then the bucket URI. So URI is nothing but your bucket name prefixed with S3:// and you have to add the key as the object key has a space in it. We have to enclose this within quotes, and for the path I'm choosing the current path. Okay, looks like we have a problem. Okay, so it's 403 unauthorized. This is because we have added a bucket policy. Let's go back to the console and quickly remove that. Let's get into the bucket and inside permissions. So let's remove the bucket policy. To confirm, type delete and then delete it. Now if we go back to command prompt, we should be able to download it. Yes, it worked. So ls, so it lists the files from the local. And next, let's create a bucket, which is AWS S3 MB, which is make bucket, and a similar naming convention, S3:/ and then the bucket name. And it creates a bucket as you can see here. Let's list and see if it's actually created. Yes, we have both the buckets now. And it's also very simple to remove the bucket. It's AWS S3 RB and again the bucket URI. That's it. It removes the bucket. So go ahead and try few of the commands by yourself. It's very simple. That's it for today, guys. Hope you found it useful. We'll see you in the next session with another AWS service. Thank you.